Hello everyone, can you all hear me all right in the back there? Okay, thanks. I'll be presenting today on RFID technology. Some of us may be aware of what it is. An emerging technology, and I'd like to talk about what it is about first, and then also go into some of its privacy implications in a little bit of detail. I just want to start here with giving you a couple of scenarios to try to relate this with some other technologies that have evolved in the past. Suppose that 15 years ago, you were told by someone that there's a technology that could potentially erase everything on your computer. It could aid criminals in stealing your credit card and bank information, and it could even make you a party to unethical and illegal activities. And also, if there was another time when someone told you that there is a technology that is being developed that could claim one life in every 13 minutes, it could damage the environment and leave our country hostage to foreign interests. If you were told about these technologies back in the day, would you have supported the banning of them based on the information I just gave you? If you answered yes to that, let me tell you that if such legislation had been enacted at the time, we would not have the internet or the automobile in use today. So part of my attempt here with this presentation is to try to answer the question of whether RFID technology is the tale of RFID is the same, or if the equation is a little bit different this time around. And I'll attempt to talk about that in the next 10 or 15 minutes here. Alright, so first I'll start by giving you a definition of RFID, what it stands for and what it means. And then I'll give you a general model of how it works. We'll also look at some of the different types of RFID tags, some of its common uses, some of the benefits of the technology, the privacy and security risks associated with it, and of course when you have a threat, we also need to look at what kind of solutions we have to protect ourselves. So we'll end by looking at that. So what is RFID? RFID stands for Radio Frequency and Identification. The formal definition provided by Wikipedia is technology that uses radio waves to exchange data between a reader and an electronic tag attached to an object for the purpose of identification and tracking. Now, that seems like a little bit too much to chew down at once. If that's too much for you, just bear with me here. I'll attempt to break that down for you over the next few slides. So how does RFID work? That's the general model of the technology. You can think of this as the kind of interaction we see between a barcode tagged onto a product and the scanner we use to read that barcode. So basically we have a device that would have an RFID tag on it, and then there's a reader that we use to scan the tag and extract any information stored in the tag. And then from there, the information is sent to an appropriate application server, from where it gets directed to the organization's database, the company's database. So to just give you an example, Gillette was one of the first to implement RFID tags in its supply chain. So imagine that there's a pack of RFID-enabled Gillette razors in a store in the United States somewhere. So if we use a handheld RFID reader to scan that tag, we would basically be extracting the unique identification number in the tag. The reader would then send that along to the appropriate application server, where it would get authenticated as a genuine Gillette product. So we would be able to use the tag to authenticate that this is a genuine product and it's not a counterfeit or something like that. And then from there, that information would get sent to the to Gillette's United States database, where it would get stored. All right. Some other quick points about RFID here. The size of this of the RFID chip, it varies from about the size of a rice grain to the size of a dime. That picture we see there is the size of an RFID chip that you could get implanted in your body. So that's about as big as it gets. And again, it can be as small as a rice grain as well. How much this technology costs? The size, volume, and sophistication of the RFID chip are directly proportionate to its cost. So the smallest ones would be the least sophisticated, and they would also be the cheapest ones. The more expensive ones would start at about $50, and they go up to hundreds of dollars if we're talking about the kind that we could get implanted into our bodies. So I'd like to just shed some light on the different types of RFID that are out there. There's basically two ways you can classify RFID devices. There's you can classify it based on mobility and based on performance. First, we'll look at classification based on mobility. If we can say that RFID devices are either fixed, and obviously that means they don't move; they're stay put in one place. And then an example of a fixed type of RFID would be an easy pass. If some of us travel frequently interstate, we might have an easy pass attached to the window pane of our cars. You may or may not be aware that that too is an RFID technology. And the tag that we have on our cars, that is the easy pass, that's on our window panes, that serves as the RFID tag. And then the RFID reader is basically attached onto the roof of the actual collection lanes, which allows you to just whisk past through there without having to stop and pay in cash. That's an example of a fixed RFID device. A mobile device would be a handheld reader. As we can see in the picture there, there's a carton that has an RFID tag on it, and it's being used for inventory purposes at a warehouse. The other way to classify RFID would be based on performance, and when we're classifying based on performance, we say that it is either active or passive. So an active RFID tag has a couple of distinguishing features. An active tag is battery powered. It has a long distance reader, meaning that if there's an RFID tag that is active, it can be read from a distance of 300 feet or even more. And it's traditionally used with fixed readers, as an example of the easy tag we just saw. And this type of tag generally has a life of 3 to 8 years. And then there's also the passive RFID tag, which is basically the complete opposite of the active tag. The passive one is non-battery powered. It is meant to be read from a short distance reader. So a passive RFID tag is generally goes along with a handheld reader. And then this type of tag has a life of about 10 years. Okay. So now I'd like to share some examples of RFID that's all around us, so to help us understand the extent to which this technology is being used in our lives right now. First, there's RFID credit cards. We may or may not have these. I know I don't have an RFID credit card just yet, but there's American Express and Visa, two of the major brands that have started issuing RFID credit cards right now. So if you don't have one now and you have one of these company credit cards, you might be getting one in the future, one expiring. So just something to watch out for. So why would you use an RFID credit card as opposed to a regular card? Apparently with an RFID card, you can pay without swiping your card, and the RFID credit card chips are passive, and they're passive enough so that you need to be 3 to 4 inches from the actual reader to be able to make a payment. And this was implemented as a security measure here to make sure that we're not making payments that we don't intend to, and that there's no theft there. An employee badge is also RFID tagged. A lot of companies are issuing RFID badges here, and this again would save you the hassle of having to swipe your badge across. It can sometimes lead to crowded security doors in an office. So this would basically help you just whisk past the security door at your workplace if you had one of these. Again, there's toll passes, so very common implementation of RFID. I just talked about that one. And there's also passports. All U.S. passports issued since the last, I think, few years they're mandatorily RFID enabled now. So if you have a U.S. passport you got in the past few years, if you don't have one yet, if you have one expiring, be assured that you will be getting an RFID passport. A rather unique implementation of RFID is a movie ticket. Now, I haven't come across this one yet, but apparently it is being used in some theaters across the country. So an RFID movie ticket would basically eliminate the long queues that we have at the box office. It would allow you to book a movie ticket by simply going in front of the poster of the movie that you wish to watch. You would use your cell phone to scan the RFID tag on the poster, and you would automatically reserve a ticket for yourself. So that's the little bit of convenience that the guys at the movie theaters are attempting to provide for us there. we've seen how RFID is being implemented all around us. I'd like to take a look now at some of its benefits. One of the major benefits or potential benefits of RFID is patient identification. Here we see an X-ray of a patient's hands where he's got RFID chipped in both hands. Patient identification would basically help ensure that all patients, including newborns, are properly identified and that they receive the right treatment, procedures, and medication. One place where patient identification using RFID would be especially useful is in the case of mentally disabled patients, as well as someone, for example, who's suffering from Alzheimer's. And if a patient is unable to provide their doctors with critical information that could aid the doctor in saving their life, say if there's a critical surgery that needs to be performed in time to save a life, if the patient has an RFID chip implanted or is wearing a RFID tagged wristband, the doctor would be able to then get all of the medical records of that person without that person having to volunteer that information. It could even aid in saving a life if it comes to that. And the other obvious benefit is if you have a pet, I know the last thing any of us would want is to lose a loved pet. So if you have a pet, we could put an RFID tagged collar around them or get them chipped, and it would basically ensure that you never lose your pet again. Another common application, I kind of alluded to this a little before, the electronic product code is basically the name given to RFID that's implemented in the supply chain. So if we have any of our big companies using RFID tags to make life easier for them in their supply chain, we call that EPC. And EPC helps conduct product authentication, tracking, inventory management is also an important thing that it helps ensure. So it helps companies and supermarkets ensure stock volumes. Product authentication that EPC provides could help ensure that consumer safety is protected. It could help eliminate any counterfeit or adulterated materials in food and medicines. So that's something that's important to consumer safety. Another thing that it could help prevent is robbery detection. To give you an example, there was actually a real life story about this a couple of months ago in Feb this year. There's a casino in Las Vegas where someone attempted to steal $1.5 million worth of casino chips. And little did the robber know that even before they left the casino, these chips were rendered useless. Now, what they didn't know was that the chips were actually RFID tagged. And as soon as the casino management found out about the robbery, they basically just disabled all the tags, so they became useless. So that's definitely positive there. And there's actually a lot more benefits, but for the sake of time, I've kind of trimmed it down to some that might be most useful to us in the context today. All right, so RFID is being implemented all around us. There's a lot of benefits, but obviously where there's benefits, there's also got to be a flip side to it. There's got to be some negatives, and basically the one big risk here is the privacy and security risk that RFID technology brings. And I'd just like to take a look at some of the risks here. The first one is rogue scanning. Rogue scanning is defined as scanning of your RFID tag property by unauthorized and stealthy rogues. This could be basically done by someone who gains access to the RFID reader and attempts to obtain a tag information through scanning. So if the tag is active and say that it can be read at a distance, this creates a larger problem, because if you have, say if you have some kind of a possession that has an active tag on it, someone could be reading it from a distance, and because they're far away, you wouldn't even notice them. So this is a bit of a concern. Part of the problem here is that tags cannot distinguish between an unauthorized reader and an authorized reader. So in other words, a tag would respond to every RFID reader, and also a reader cannot distinguish between tags that it is allowed to identify and other tags. So it would basically scan every tag. The other privacy risk here is eavesdropping, which is acquiring of wire, oral, and electronic unauthorized communications. So eavesdropping would basically be if there's communication going on between an RFID tag and an RFID reader, someone in the middle could eavesdrop and extract important information that the tag is giving away. The one limiting factor here, though, is that eavesdropping is only possible at a short distance, and when someone is in close proximity to you, it's harder for you not to notice that something is wrong if someone is trying to launch an attack. A couple of security risks also. Obviously, if someone is going to get some critical information from a private possession, the one obvious risk is identity theft. For example, if someone could get critical information about you, passport information through an unauthorized reader, they could then use that to make another passport in your name, and then that could lead to identity theft, just as an example. Also, there's tracking that can happen. That's basically the monitoring of movement using an implant or an attachable RFID object. This is the kind of risk that right away you buy into if you are going to get yourself chipped or you're going to put a wristband that's RFID enabled. Just as an example, I'd like to share that there's actually a club in Barcelona that offers a VIP members only benefit, and that requires the VIP members to get themselves implanted with a chip in their upper arm. And what this does, it basically allows the club to better cater to the taste of their members. So for example, if you were a VIP member at this club and you got yourself chipped, and as soon as you enter or come into close proximity of the club, the management would be able to find that out, and then before you reach the bar, your favorite drink would be prepared and waiting for you when you get there. But obviously the flip side of that is that the casino is able to now track your movements whenever you are in close range to its readers. So that's an obvious privacy that you're going to give up for an extra bit of pleasure. So we know that a direct RFID chip implant into your body can potentially be used to track you, but many of you may be wondering if that is true with the normal implementation of RFID. So for example, if there's an RFID product in a store, how much of a risk is that to your privacy? I just like to share that with you. If that is how you feel right now about all the RFID around us, the good news is that the RFID tag products that you'd see, that is pretty much the most common implementation of RFID today. So the RFID products you see lying in a superstore like Walmart or Acme, it contains nothing more than a unique ID, which helps authenticate the product, and it helps these supermarkets basically keep track of inventory. So if you fear that if buying a product that's RFID tagged would allow a supermarket to maybe track your movements for as long as you possess the product, the good news is that that kind of fear is basically unrealistic. It's a little unfounded because a company, if they did try to store more information in their tag than just the identifier for that product, the costs for them of implementing this technology would increase so much that it would basically be useless. They would be incurring a loss in trying to implement this. So the only way that RFID is going to be beneficial for them is if they keep the cost really low, and if they do that, the memory needs to be so little that they could store nothing more than just an identifier. But also on the other hand, perhaps one of the most aggressive privacy concerns, even though this is a little far-fetched, that comes to mind is what happens if a government could potentially gain access to all commercially controlled RFID databases in the country, and then also have therefore full access to the consumer, the traveler, and even an entire population. So what happens if all of this information that's being collected from us, about us, all around us, if this gets into the wrong hands, what that would lead to? So that is definitely something that would cross our mind at some point, but at this point is a far-fetched thing. So it's important for us to recognize that some RFID applications are generally more beneficial than harmful, and but there are also then other applications where privacy and security threats are more pertinent and real. I'd like to now offer some solutions to we've discussed some privacy. I'm sorry, sure. So we have, I'd like to just end by sharing some technical solutions. In response to growing concern from people, there's kill and sleep tags that are being implemented in RFID tags, so that if you had bought a product that had one of these, you could basically kill the technology, and it would render the tag useless, but it would help protect your privacy. Then something that goes beyond that is sleep tag, which you could use to basically turn the RFID tag on and off to protect your privacy. There's also brute force methods that you can apply. You can try to tear or break the object, which is really not recommended because it could damage it, and if it's in the case of something like a passport, it's actually illegal to do that. It could lead to penalty, including a jail term. So it's really not something that's recommended. The other thing you could do is try to place a protective cover around your object to help protect your privacy. So I'd like to leave you here with just a cartoon that tries to sort of show you the light side of this technology. And basically, to conclude, I'd like to say that this is a technology with great potential, and it is important that we understand some of its benefits and also be aware of its risks so that we can take active part as citizens in trying to help shape technology so that it can benefit us but also